Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, where I cover vampires, werewolves, and other supernatural creatures. In my last video, I covered the entire From Dusk Till Dawn film trilogy, so I figured why not continue and take a look at the TV series. The show has 3 seasons and was created in 2014 by the director of the original film, Robert Rodriguez. It's kind of like a reimagining of the original movie, because the story is pretty similar in the start with the Gecko brothers running from the law, but they dive much deeper into the origins of the vampires and their history. There's also much more of a connection between the Gecko brothers and the vampire queen, Santanico. In this video, we're going to take a look at the snake-like vampires known as the Culebra, how they were once ruled over by demons, and more. If you enjoy videos about vampires and other supernatural creatures, leave a like and subscribe for new videos every week.
She was so beautiful, the serpent god had to have her.
The vampires in From Dusk Till Dawn are known as Culebra, which means serpent in Spanish. They are descended from a serpent goddess. That's why they have a very distinct, snake-like appearance with green skin that resembles scales, and fangs like a snake. Inside the temple, we see a statue of a goddess. Maybe this is who they are descended from. In the film trilogy, their origin goes all the way back to the ancient Aztecs. But in the show, it goes back even further. We still don't know exactly how the Culebra were created. However, we do know where they came from, which is very important. It turns out the Culebra come from an entirely different realm known as Xibalba. Every time I say that, I can't help but think of Xibalba from Star Wars. Xibalba! There are 2 realms that we know of. The one where humans live, which is called Teltic-Pac, the realm of light, and the second, which is Xibalba, also known as the Underworld. Many people refer to it as Hell itself. We do get to see this hellish world for a few minutes in the final season. It seems to be a mirror of our own world, but colored like Mars. Xibalba is ruled by demons, and here, the Culebra are nothing but slaves, the lowest in the hierarchy. Some of the demons appear like humans, while others like the Olmec are huge monstrous creatures. The leader of these demons is Queen Amaru. She ruled over the Culebra with an iron fist, and any that disobeyed would have their fangs removed. Eventually, the Culebra had enough of their servitude and escaped to the realm of mortals. The Culebra that escaped were known as the 9 Lords, the leaders of all Culebra, also called the Lords of the Night. One of the lords, named Vengaza, was even the personal servant of Amaru. After the 9 Lords escaped to Xibalba, the queen attempted to track them down and kill them. The lords were prepared for this though, and set a trap for Amaru, and she walked right into it. They killed her and devoured her entire body. The only thing they couldn't consume was her blood, because it was too powerful. They sealed the blood away in a special well under the earth so nobody would find it. There was a few powerful demons that came with Amaru. The lords used a Culebra that was a demon hunter to trap these other demons in something called the Labyrinth, which we will talk more about soon. The Culebra were now free from servitude and could do whatever they wanted, no longer bound by the demon queen of Xibalba. For centuries, they would rule over a large area that would become Mexico and Texas. Each lord ruled over their own respective area. The Aztec temples were seemingly designed by the vampires. Some were used to conduct rituals and gather blood. The titty twister is described as a giant people juicer, with grinders in the floor, and veins for the blood to run through. Eventually, a very special woman is born named Kisa. She was born at the dawn of a sacred cycle, when the morning star aligned with the sun. The high priest of their people believed this gave her a special connection to the gods. At first, they brought things like jewels and flowers to honor the gods. But the Lords of the Night had sacrificed themselves to make the earth, so it was only fitting they also make a sacrifice. They began sacrificing many innocent people to appease the gods. Kisa was horrified by this and could no longer see innocent people killed in her name. She tried to run from her people, but the priest found her, and that's when the lords decided if she would not get them blood willingly, they would imprison her. Kisa is thrown into a pit of snakes, and one goes into her mouth. This is how she is turned into a Culebra. She is then given her new name by Amancio Malvado, the oldest and the leader of the 9 Lords. This is how she came to be known as Santanico Pandemonium. In the first season of the show, it mentions nothing about this Malvado guy, but later says he was the one who turned her, gave her the name, and made her dance in the temple. So they kind of retconned their own story a bit there, but whatever. While doing research for this video, I found many other people confused by this same inconsistency. She's clearly thrown into a pit of snakes by the priest, and Malvado is nowhere to be seen. But I guess somehow he's responsible for this. After being turned, she was drawn back to the temple, where she would be imprisoned. She is not physically imprisoned there, with bars and chains, but it's a supernatural force field that stops her from leaving the temple. For 500 years, she would lure people in with her beauty to satiate the lords. It's implied that each lord had their own temples and establishments that gathered blood in some way or another. We don't know everything the lords did to create this magical prison, but they put some of the queen's blood in a snake, then placed it at the end of the labyrinth. So if anyone wanted to free her, they would have to make it through. Inside the temple is like a giant maze, and somewhere in there is the entrance to the labyrinth. This is no ordinary corn maze. It plays tricks with your mind. Similar to the catacombs from As Above, So Below, the labyrinth will confront you with mistakes from your past and force you to face them. This is known as the trials. It is extremely hard to make it out, and sending someone into the labyrinth is usually considered a death sentence.
You know I'll never make it out.
There is also time dilation within the labyrinth. Carlos was sent in, and we are told that he was gone for 3 months. But later, we learn that to him, it felt like a lifetime. He grew old, watching the woman he loved be with someone else. But he did eventually escape. Professor Aidan Tanner, aka Sex Machine, is a university professor who has been studying the Culebra for a long time. He is the TV show equivalent of Tom Savini's character from the film, but much more expanded. He still has the codpiece gun from Desperado though. Tom Savini actually shows up playing a totally different character. At one point, Machine tries to get him to wear the codpiece gun and he refuses because it looks stupid. Also, the father of the Fuller family is played by Robert Patrick, who played Buck in From Dusk Till Dawn, Texas Blood Money. Okay, one more. Danny Trejo, who played Razor Charlie and Razor Eddie in the movies, appears as some kind of special warrior. He's inside the bar and comes alive like the statues in Harry Potter. Okay, back to the show. Machine has been studying the Culebra most of his life and knows about the temple. He says they would conduct sacrifices here to summon the Vision Serpent. This would apparently grant them access to a higher plane of consciousness. Their ancestors mapped the stars and understood the movements of the galaxies. Some even say they could communicate with alien races. After 500 years of being imprisoned, Santanico finally finds a way to escape the Twister. This is where the Gecko brothers come into the picture. In the original film, Richie was suffering from some kind of mental condition like paranoid schizophrenia. But in the show, they changed this. Instead of Richie having strange episodes for no reason, they're being caused by Santanico. She can telepathically communicate to Richie and lures him to the bar to set her free. In the show, it's also Carlos who hires the Geckos to rob the bank in the first place. So they were being used by the Culebras from the very beginning. Richie was being lured there by Santanico, and Seth was being lured there by the promise of money. The first season of the show has a lot in common with the 1996 movie. They robbed the bank, kidnapped the Fuller family and used the RV to get across the Mexican border, and finally arrive at the Twister. I like that Santanico does the same move as Salma Hayek in the movie, pouring the alcohol down her leg and Richie drinking it. Eventually everything goes crazy in the bar and the Culebras show their true form. Richie is fatally wounded and turned into a Culebra by Santanico. Seth, the Fullers, and Machine try to fight their way through the lower levels of the temple and escape.
You don't get to say oopsie daisy, you just friggin' killed him! I'm sorry, I slipped!
This is when Machine first explains the temple and that it's to worship the Vision Serpent. We also see all the blood from the bar is being funneled down to an area below for the higher ranking vampires. This is the entire purpose of the bar, harvesting blood. While making their way through the temple, they find Sergeant Frost. He is also a character from the original movie. Just like them, he also managed to survive the vampires and get below, but couldn't find his way out of the temple. He set up this safe area with food and weapons, and when people pass by, he gives them an option to turn around or spin the Wheel of Misfortune.
Will you play the Wheel of Misfortune like everybody else?
I also realized on my rewatch that there's only one good option on this wheel. We have Eat Lead, Fire and Brimstone, Feed to the Vamps, Suck the Pipe, don't want to find out what that one means, and lastly, Shopping Spree. Let's see what they land on.
It's your lucky day.
Phew, that was a close one. He lets them grab whatever they want and sends them on their way. Kate wonders how long he's been down here. Frost says this: a month, a year, time's like a ribbon, finds a way to knot itself into a bow. So we have no idea how long he's been down here. Definitely longer than a month if he's gathered all these supplies. Kate tries to convince him to help, but he's been deeper into the temple before, and it scared him. However, later on he does decide to try to help, which leads to his doom. But at least he died trying to do the right thing. A few people are killed along the way. Machine and Scott are turned into Culebra, but Seth and Richie are ready to conquer the labyrinth. Richie has been turned by Santanico, and they inform Seth that the only way to escape is to complete the labyrinth. There's a Culebra prophecy that speaks of two hero brothers setting the queen free. It was always their destiny to end up at the temple. There's another part of this prophecy though. If Santanico leaves the temple, it could mean the end for all Culebra. That might be why Malvado trapped her there in the first place. When they are deep in the temple, they are attacked by what looks like Aztec warriors, or tribesmen. They might have been trapped in the temple as punishment, or chose to live there. Inside the labyrinth, they are forced to repeat a job that they had previously failed, and meet up with multiple people from their past. After completing it, they re-emerge at the end of the labyrinth and find the snake with Santanico's blood. Richie lets the snake go inside him. Pause. Then they go back to Santanico so she can perform the final ritual. All her followers begin to chant, and the snake that went into Richie bites Santanico, and I guess this restores her to her full power and lets her leave the temple. During the ritual, the entire temple begins to move and change. This is what made me think that the vampires had to have been the ones that built them in the first place. Upon completion, light enters the room, killing all the Culebra except Richie and Santanico, who are now a couple. After 500 years, she is finally free. Also, guess how all the vampires died? It was a goddamn disco ball again. I forgot to mention in my last video that when the vampires are killed by the disco ball at the end, it sounds like a space battle going on. Close your eyes and listen to this and tell me that you'd be able to guess it's from a vampire movie. There's so many nods to the original movies in this show, but it's often done tastefully and you wouldn't even know it was a reference to the original. Seth talks about working at Big Kahuna Burger as a teenager, which is a fictional restaurant that appears in multiple Quentin Tarantino films. I couldn't find a shot of Chongo beer, but I know it's in here somewhere. Also, in the last video I mentioned that the name Santanico Pandemonium is from an old Mexican horror movie. Well, in the show, they actually referenced that, which I thought was pretty cool.
Christ, you got the same name as that chick in that famous Mexican horror flick. I even got a cop.
Now that Santanico has finally been freed from the temple, her goal is to kill the one who put her there, Malvado, the oldest and leader of the 9 Lords. Richie and Santanico work together and remain in a relationship until the 3rd season. In summary, the first season is about Santanico escaping the Twister. The second season is about killing Malvado, and the third we'll talk about soon. I want to talk about the Culebra's abilities, and the difference between an ordinary Culebra and a Lord.
Sex machine.
The names of the Lords, starting with the leader, are Amancio Malvado, Celestino Occulto. He was the one who created the Bloodwell. Vengaza Verdugo, Emilio, Difunto, and the other 4 Lords are never referred to by name. Lord Vengaza rules over the Culebra prison. This is a prison filled with Culebra and human for the worst of the worst criminals. Unlike a normal prison though, this one is run by the inmates. I'd like to see an episode of 60 Days In take place in here. The Lords are the oldest and strongest of the Culebra in the mortal realm. It's very likely there was Culebra before them in Xibalba, but they were the ones who managed to escape. Aside from the Lords being stronger, there is one thing that makes them special. Each one of the 9 Lords has a snake inside them. You must kill this snake to permanently destroy a Lord. Normal Culebra do not have a snake inside them. Santanico originally had a snake inside her, but it must have been removed at some point because she doesn't have one anymore. Maybe the mysterious snake at the end of the labyrinth was hers, but now it's in Richie. So does this make Richie a Lord? No. Does this make him stronger than other Culebra? Well, it seems no. Like I said before, the first season shows Santanico being turned by a priest, but the second season says she was turned by Malvado. This strange contradiction really annoys me, and it's never explained how these two stories fit together. Regardless, Santanico is still unique in some way. She is the only vampire that can fly, and for some reason Culebra have an inclination to worship her. Even after she disappears from the Twister, people are found all over Texas with shrines to Santanico. They also refer to her as La Diosa, which means the goddess. In the third season, when a demon is controlling a large group of Culebra, Santanico is able to speak to them and break the spell. It's as if she has some kind of special control over other Culebra. That's why I liked the idea of her being turned by the priest rather than another Culebra, because it would explain why she is unique compared to the others. The leader of the 9 Lords is Amancio Malvado, and he wears a special coat. And guess what it's made of? If you guessed people's faces, you're right. As punishment, he will use these special metal nails that he has and cut your face and pull it off. All Culebra can appear in their human form or snake-like form. Some appear much more monstrous when they transform, like this guy from season 2. Unlike traditional vampires, they have retractable fangs like a snake, and these fangs can inject venom. This venom will cause the victim to have hallucinations, pain, high body temperature, and fever-like symptoms. Then they turn. Culebra venom also works on other Culebra, and the effects of their venom can be unique. Some venom makes you hallucinate, and others can make you pass out like a sedative. Similar to the movie, some Culebra will turn very fast, while others will take longer. It is possible for a Culebra to bite someone without turning them. They can choose whether to inject their venom or not. As for general biology, Culebras are technically undead and have no heartbeat. They are also cold-blooded like a snake. They appear in mirrors and are not affected by holy objects like they were in the original movie. Machine says that in Mexico, the vampires resemble snakes, but in other places with different beliefs, vampires can appear like bats instead. Culebras are immortal and immune to sickness and disease. They have to feed on blood for nourishment, but can still eat ordinary food. It's not clear how often Culebras have to feed. Carlos was trapped in the labyrinth for months without feeding and seemed okay. When Culebras feed on someone, they sometimes learn new skills. Richie fed on a bartender and after could make better drinks. Culebra are quite strong compared to a normal human, able to throw someone over 12 feet or pick someone up off the ground with one arm easily. As for speed, they're pretty similar to humans. In the first season, Santanico is able to teleport a few times when inside the temple, but after leaving, she never does it again.
Oh, you don't see it? He moves! Right there!
Culebras have heightened senses like most vampires. They can smell blood from very far away, and can see blood flowing beneath the skin. Their hearing is also very good, able to focus on someone's heartbeat. One thing that makes Culebras so dangerous is their healing ability. They can heal from most fatal wounds, including being shot through the neck with a shotgun or in the head with a bullet, even being set on fire. Normal gunshots do pretty much nothing to Culebra and will only slow them down for a few seconds. It takes Seth 3 seasons to figure this out. Every time things go left, he pulls at his gun and it does nothing. Then he gets beat up. Similar to Dracula Untold, not only will new wounds heal, but old ones as well. When Richie is turned, he no longer needs his glasses to see, kinda like Spider-Man. Machine tells a story that he lost his package in a smelting accident when he was younger. After being bit and turned into a Culebra, it grew back. So any wound or ailment that you have will be healed when you become a Culebra, even if it's genetic like eyesight. They are able to shapeshift into their more reptilian form, but they can also do some general shapeshifting with their body. When Machine is trying to break into a house, he was able to fit through this small hole by manipulating his body.
Broken. There's no bones left.
Culebras can perform one other kind of shapeshifting. They can take on the appearance of another person after killing them. This kind of shapeshifting is different because their body doesn't physically change. It's actually an illusion. After killing someone, you can project the image of that person into people's minds for a short period of time. Culebras say that the blood is the conduit of the soul. It's almost as if you get a small piece of their soul that allows you to temporarily embody them. I like this show's unique approach to shapeshifting. Some vampires have the ability to use telepathy to make people see visions. This must be a very powerful ability, because we only see a few Culebra capable of doing this. Santanico was able to telepathically communicate with Richie, and later Seth. She could even make them see hallucinations. Amancio was also able to use telepathy and manipulate people. Now we can talk about the special abilities. Richie says that every Culebra has a Wyob. This is a special ability that's unique to them. Santanico has her wings, and Carlos can crush someone like a boa constrictor. We see a few other vampires with unique abilities throughout the show. In Season 2, this Culebra can spit venom from a distance that knocks people unconscious. Also in Season 2, there's a guy that can grow 2 extra arms like Goro. Scott Fuller has the ability to turn his skin into a kind of armor. This doesn't only protect him from physical attacks, as it even stopped a demon from absorbing his soul. This armor can also form into blade-like weapons. Eventually, Richie learns what his ability is. He has an eye in the center of his hand. This gives him the power of mind control. If he touches someone's head with his hand and then gives them a command, they'll do whatever he says without question. It's a very useful ability because it works on humans and Culebras. The only time it didn't work is when he tried to use it on a very powerful demon.
Try a little harakiri, ass.
The Culebra only have a few weaknesses. A stake to the heart will cause their body to burn up and turn to ash. In the first season, it causes them to dematerialize. Later in the show, they start to use stake guns that shoot small wooden stakes. Culebra are also susceptible to the venom of other Culebra. It can knock them unconscious, make them hallucinate, and possibly kill. They can be killed by snake venom though. In the first season, a group of vampires is poisoned with snake venom when it's put in their drink. However, this isn't how snake venom works. A human could drink snake venom and it wouldn't do anything, because it has to come in contact with blood. The saying goes, if you bite it and you die, it's poisonous. If it bites you and you die, it's venomous. Long story short, Culebra can be killed by drinking venom, but that shouldn't be possible. Culebras can heal from almost any wound short of being decapitated. However, there's a special kind of weapon that is much more dangerous to them. If a Culebra is wounded with a Zabalban weapon, it does more damage and takes longer to heal. These weapons are very rare and are blades that have been crafted in Zabalba. Only a handful are seen throughout the series, although Richie's knife turns out to be a Zabalban blade.
Pues entonces, good luck.
One Culebra in the show was different from all the rest. He was given special abilities after completing the labyrinth. I'm talking about Carlos. He was sent into the labyrinth by another Culebra in an attempt to get rid of him. As I said before, when Carlos escaped the labyrinth, people said he was gone for 3 months. But to Carlos, it was a lifetime. At first, we assumed that he escaped on his own, but it turns out that he had help. Somehow, while inside the labyrinth, he made a deal with Zabalba. He was granted special abilities and could leave the labyrinth. It's not clear exactly what he means by made a deal with Zabalba, because Zabalba is a place, not a person. Maybe he made a deal with some kind of demon or goddess in Zabalba. While inside the labyrinth, Carlos pulls out his own fangs. We see he has metal ones to replace them. Later, Scott questions Carlos and says, "Why did you remove your fangs?" And Carlos says, "They made me." But he never clarified who or why. Queen Amaru used to remove the fangs of Culebra for punishment, so maybe it was her that he made a deal with. During Season 2, in order to get rid of Carlos, he was cut into multiple pieces and spread around the country so he couldn't come back. Later, he is reassembled because they need his help, and they easily reattach his head and limbs. So I guess it's safe to say decapitation would not work on Carlos. This is probably due to his special abilities gained from his deal with Zabalba. He was also the only Culebra to my knowledge that can walk in the sun. That's a pretty useful ability. You can see the other Culebras have to completely cover up when they're outside.
Hiding? From you?
The final season is about Amaru, the demon queen of Xibalba. During this season, we find out that the oil bonds stolen by the geckos in the first season were part of a map to the blood well, where they stored Amaru's blood after she was defeated. I will say the 3 seasons lead into each other very nicely. It doesn't feel like they're having to invent totally new things to keep the show going. Amaru is the queen of the underworld. She ends up possessing the body of Kate Fuller, but she needs her original body in order to open a portal to Xibalba. She wants to destroy all humans and Culebras. During the final battle, Carlos reveals that he cannot interfere, because he cannot go against Amaru. At one point, Amaru does succeed in opening a portal to Xibalba, and Richie is thrown in. While there, Carlos appears and gives him words of encouragement, and tells Richie that he's always had a connection to the underworld. That's why he's seen those demons in the gas station. Carlos says that he's always been half in, half out. Carlos can appear in Xibalba because he sold his soul, but he cannot directly interfere. This is definitely more evidence that he possibly made a deal with Amaru. It would benefit her to have Carlos out of the final battle. There's also something mentioned about Amaru's blood being able to quench their thirst for blood for all eternity. But I think that was a lie, because the reason the 9 lords didn't drink the blood was because it was too powerful. Maybe it would quench your thirst for blood, but you would be possessed by Amaru. We see that when the blood gets into Kate Fuller, she is fully possessed by Amaru, so you probably don't want to drink this blood. Amaru has the ability to awaken someone's shadow self. Apparently everyone has a dark side that's linked to Xibalba, and she can basically turn someone evil. I want to talk about the Ranger for a second, Freddy Gonzalez. He is a Texas Ranger who gets tied up in the world of Culebras after trying to track down the Gecko brothers. He is the partner of Earl McGraw, who is killed by the brothers in episode 1. The same Earl McGraw from the first movie that was also featured in 2 other Quentin Tarantino movies. At first, Freddy wants no part of the Culebras, but he eventually becomes the Peacekeeper. This is a special position that is meant to keep peace between the humans and Culebra. That's not all though. He discovers that he is descended from an ancient warrior bloodline known as the Atomi. They must have hunted Culebra through the centuries because Freddy is immune to Culebra venom. That's what makes him the perfect Peacekeeper. He's also able to put up a much better fight than most other humans, so his bloodline might also grant him heightened physical abilities.
I want to show you what a real queen looks like.
The 3rd season is about defeating Amaru, the single greatest threat to Culebras. After the 9 lords betrayed her and fled to the realm of mortals, she wants to destroy all Culebras and humans. Let's talk about the Queen of Demons, Amaru. She is extremely strong and has many powerful demons that serve her. There is no demon or Culebra that could defeat her alone. Amaru can absorb someone's soul by just touching them, and this makes her even stronger. She can control humans and Culebra just by being in their presence and command them to do anything. When someone is being influenced by Amaru, their eyes turn blood red. One of the many demons under the control of Amaru is Calavera, the Skull Keeper. He slightly reminds me of the mouth of Sauron from Lord of the Rings. I did a poll asking what's the best movie trilogy, and I can't believe that Lord of the Rings won by a landslide. I know it's a good trilogy, I just didn't think it would win by so much. Alright, back to the Skull Keeper. He takes people's skulls by pulling them right out of their skin. The person's head then reforms and the Skull Keeper has complete control over that person. They basically become a puppet. We see the Skull Keeper surrounded by skulls, able to control them all at once. He is defeated by the Gecko brothers, but before that, he was trapped in the labyrinth. The same goes for Brassa, who is Amaru's right-hand man. He is a sun god demon from Xibalba. Being a sun god, he's basically kryptonite for Culebras. He says that the body he was in was a preacher that he took over, so it's not clear what Brassa's true form looks like, but probably similar to his hand that looked much more demonic. I have to admit, the way Amaru is defeated is a bit weird. I was expecting a big battle between Santanico and Amaru, the Queen of Culebras versus the Queen of Demons, but that doesn't really happen. Amaru puts a smackdown on Santanico and is ultimately defeated by Kate Fuller. Amaru started by killing the 9 lords because they devoured her body. Therefore, her remains were inside the 9 Lords, and she needed these remains in order to resurrect her original body. For some reason, her original body is the key to being able to open up a portal to Xibalba. Eventually, Amaru leaves Kate's body and her own body is restored, but there was a piece of Amaru left inside Kate. I guess this means that she can't kill Kate. This allowed her to rip Amaru apart, and all the souls that she had consumed pull Amaru back into the portal. So in the end, she was kind of defeated by herself. In the final episode, everyone goes their own way, just like in the ending of the film. Carlos and Santanico leave with the remaining Culebras. Seth, Richie, and Kate go their own way. The show ends with the Gecko brothers, assisted by Kate, robbing a bank.
You. Be cool.
I absolutely love that she says "everybody be cool" as the final line in the show, because that's such a callback to the original film.
Right! Everybody be cool!
It's not just a callback to From Dusk Till Dawn though. This line is also repeated in other Quentin Tarantino movies like Pulp Fiction, so it's kind of a nod to Tarantino as well.
At El Rey.
And what is El Rey? Taco stand in Baja?
The last thing I wanted to talk about is El Rey. During season 2, Malvado is attempting to escape to El Rey. We are never told where this is or how you get there, but it's described as heaven for vampires. In the original 1996 movie, El Rey was the name of a mysterious place where criminals could retire. It's from a Jim Thompson novel named The Getaway from 1958. Robert Rodriguez would even go on to name his television network El Rey, so he definitely has a thing for that name. I was reading an article by David Crow on the website Den of Geek, and Rodriguez says this: the reason he had Cheech Marin appear 3 times in the movie was because he kind of plays the devil. El Rey is known for being in the Jim Thompson book as a place where criminals go, but it's kind of like hell. You get there, and you can never leave. It's like Hotel California. That's why when Kate asks to go with Seth, he says, "Do you know what El Rey is? Do you know where I'm going?" And when Cheech says, "Seth, it's time to go," it's like he's beckoning him to hell. This leaves the question of what is El Rey in the television show. Apparently you need 1,000 souls as payment to get there. Malvado was planning on using Amaru's blood from the blood well as payment. She can absorb souls, so I guess her blood would be made up of many souls. A mysterious Culebra shows up to Malvado's bar and asks for an empty glass. As they are extracting the blood from the blood well, his glass fills. Malvado does show Santanico an hallucination of El Rey, and he says something important. It's a place where Culebra can walk in the sun. We see that Richie is not burned by the sun in Xibalba. That makes me think that El Rey is actually Xibalba, aka Hell. This would also line up with the idea that El Rey was also Hell in the original movie. Although it is possible that El Rey is an entirely separate realm. Something that's never explained is how could this man open a portal to Xibalba, or wherever El Rey is. As soon as Malvado was killed, the mysterious man leaves. Maybe this man had a connection to Xibalba, like Carlos did. At the very end of the show, Machine and a Jaguar warrior from Xibalba are sucked into the portal and never mentioned again. So I guess the professor is just stuck in Xibalba forever. That's my video on the From Dusk Till Dawn television series. I really enjoyed covering this series after doing the movies. There may be a few little inconsistencies here and there, but overall it's very entertaining. They managed to have a really unique take on vampire lore. If you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend. What did all of you think about the snake vampires? And does it live up to the original film? If there's any other movies or TV shows you want me to cover, please leave them in the comments down below. I love reading through your suggestions. If you enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't. It helps out a lot and I really appreciate it. As always, a big thanks to my members for supporting the channel. Roderick, Zothar's Paradox, Adam Okabe, Matthew Batson, Dragon Faye Rose, Emily Nixon, Onyx Cat, Walter Collin, Dominique Toussaint, Czar Shadow, Rich Sauce, Great Grebo, Nate's in La La Land, Dark Tower 9595, Keegan McLaren, William Gutsko, Jason Miller, Gabriel Ragsdale, Stephen Lloyd, Jake Walker, Awesome Pea Shooter, Cyper 2890, Mark Thorpe, Stephen 556, Owen Wildish, and Joseph Roman. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.